Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's May 31st, 2019. I'm out in the Western Garden plot, the plot that we're growing the perennials in predominantly this year. And I've wanted for some time to share my experiences incorporating wood chips into our vegetable gardens or our kitchen gardens, the place where we're growing most of the produce that we're going to feed our families or potentially sell at market. As I've mentioned in other videos, we use the Jean-Martin Fortier, the market gardener, and Elliot Coleman's techniques of using permanent raised beds to grow our food in. These are permanent raised beds. They've been transitioned to grow some of our perennial plants in for this year and potentially next year as well. And as you could see from the surrounding area here, we use lots and lots of wood chips in our gardening systems. Now we use tons of wood chips in our Back to Eden systems, in our hugelkultur systems, in our food forests, and there'll be videos to come on that as well. And I made videos in the past about wood chips, so you might search the channel for some questions and comments about wood chips as well. But this video I specifically wanted to share some of my experiences in potentially a couple of the gardens with incorporating wood chips into the gardens. Now in this Western garden plot, I've been working on this garden area here for 3 years. I've been building it up now. These raised beds next to the building over to my left, your right of the screen, they're about a total of 2 foot tall. These are about 3.5 feet tall relative to the roadway going right alongside of here in the work area and greenhouse. So the property slopes down this way, and I wanted all the beds to be at the same level, and then gradually we started incorporating the kennel panels around the side as well. We did that I think a year ago. But each year I've used lots and lots and lots, many truckloads of wood chips just to build up this area. Now when I was building the area up, I'd also bring in compost from our large composting systems that we do here on site and built these permanent raised beds. These beds were rebuilt. In other words, we added more compost to the surface of them this last fall. One of the setbacks with using lots and lots of wood chips to build up your garden plots and bring up the level of the area is because there's the tremendous variation in the size of the particles from large long stick twigs to larger diameter limbs that have been chopped up, especially with our principal or our primary tree service. They use an old-fashioned or a large tree wood chipper, and therefore the particles that come out of it are much larger. Even though the same small branch will go through a smaller tree services wood chipper and end up in very small particles with great surface area, which is ideal. When some of these smaller branches go through, let me just grab something here. So when some of the smaller branches go through the larger wood chipper, they end up feeding through the system and not getting broken up completely. And that can be a real hassle if you're, as a gardener. I use the material, I sort through the stuff somewhat and say, oh geez, that really bony looking stuff I'll put to the side and let that be some of the base. And it's all going to break down and turn into beautiful soil ultimately. But one of the things is, as the wood chips start to degrade, they compress and compact down over time. You have to add more and more on top of it, and the same thing with the compost, because the compost will get worked by the microorganisms and brought right into the wood chips, converting those wood chips into very valuable nutrient-rich soil ultimately. Now there are multiple benefits to using wood chips on just about any place in your property. Certainly in your paths and all in the gardens, they help to cover the soil, decreasing soil erosion, decreasing evaporation, acting as a mulch, acting as a habitat for the microorganisms and the ones you can see with your bare eyes, the earthworms, the beetles, beneficial insects as well. So the wood chips provide those resources. They're also a great nutritional resource, because when we start bringing in the wood chips, we're bringing in a significant carbon source that's important for fungi. And the fungi are really important for maturing the soil transition from a bacterially dominated soil, which promotes weed growth, to a more balanced fungal and bacterial population of microorganisms in the soil that promote the vegetables that we'll want to grow for our gardens, and to ultimately the fungally dominated soil that we would use in our food forest or in a mature forest system. So depending on which plants you're growing and understanding how the carbon-rich material can help to feed the fungi, which bring in the rest of the successive layers of the microorganisms to enhance the maturity and create beneficial microorganisms and create probiotics, increase the relative proportion of beneficial microorganisms in the soil that feed our plants ultimately. So we need less water because of the water retention. We have less loss of soil because we have our paths being covered as well. Now, certainly our garden bed should be covered at all times. Nature really, bare ground doesn't really exist very long in nature. Mother Nature covers it right up right away. So by using the wood chips in the garden, we have all of those benefits. Now, one of the things, we use the wood chips directly off the trucks when they come, so I don't pile it and let it mature or start to break down in the piles. We need it so much all over the place that as soon as it comes off the truck, we use it in one of our systems, and there are multiple systems on our property that we use it in. So what I wanted to do today was show you what the breakdown products of the stuff that's in the path actually looks like. Now, with one caveat, we have high winds here. We have it's been very cold, wet falls, winters, and springs so far. So the ground in the paths has a higher moisture content than the permanent raised bed. So there'll be more moisture in that. So it isn't going to be breaking up as nice as easily. Under the area where I'm standing right now, I'm standing on one of the marginal path areas where some of the pod plants are planted as well. In order to get to the transition where we're really looking at deep, rich black soil, we'd have to go down 2 feet down here, 2.5 feet, which I'm not going to dig down that far. But I thought what I'd do is I brought a shovel over, I stuck it in the ground here. We'll take up a shovelful from here. We'll take up a shovelful from over in the eastern garden plot as well, and have a look and see what how the woody material is breaking down in these systems. I should go ahead and mention this before I do that. When I'm talking about off the truck material, and I'll put a link in the upper right hand corner of this video to a video I posted July 1st of 2016, 3 years ago, and that's when I was building the central garden plot and the eastern garden plot, building the permanent raised beds. So when we go over there, you'll be able to compare today's video with 3 years ago, what the paths actually look like. So the stuff that comes off the truck in 2 months from now, a month and a half from now, July 1st, the trees, as you can see now, the trees have just opened up and they've leafed out. We've had many flowers opening. We have seed pods developing now. So, and there's new extensions of, there's new twigs developing as a result on all of these deciduous trees that are here. So the material that our tree service uses, well, if there's some really good oak trees or maple trees or ash trees or whatever they're using, or walnut trees, they're going to go ahead and use those usable logs for either firewood or for using it to selling it to a lumber mill. So that's really important to think of. So the really large bore material that's coming off, there's very little large bore material that's coming off the trucks. Most of it is the branches that are probably 5 inches in diameter or all the way down to the seed pods. And when we're talking about carbon to nitrogen ratios, there's a higher nitrogen relative to carbon in going from the seeds to the seed pods to the leaves to the needles to the twigs to that season's growth of small twigs, going down to the last season's growth of small twigs and limbs and branches, getting down to the larger ones that are actually run through the wood chipper. So as a result, we really do have a pretty neat a combination of not as high a carbon to nitrogen ratio as most people would think about being a big tree, because a lot of that wood was utilized for other resources. So understanding what the tree service is using and what they're supplying you with is pretty important. And so I'll leave it there. I'm going to go ahead, take a shovelful of this material, which has had wood chips added to it in the paths last year on top of the wood chips from a couple of years ago. See the shovel, I don't know if you could see that, the shovel sinks in really easily into the paths. It's a little red clover right here. I do leave lots of the clover, small clovers in here now, one weed. And as you can see, there's small woody leaf-like material, little twigs on the very surface of this. And then because it's so wet, it's still stratified. You can see the layers as we go down through this material. And the material breaks up. There are some bigger twigs in there. Not sure how well this is all going to show up, hopefully. So it's really nice, dark, rich, dark brown material. No obvious mycelium in here right now. I don't see any earthworms in this group right here. But if we were to dig into the compost right alongside it, the earthworms are loaded right in that area. So those wood chips, even though last year, or at least 1 year ago, there's wood chips in this material, there has been some erosion from the permanent raised beds. As I go through and I use a tilther or I rake it, the material goes down into the paths as well, and it mixes with the wood chips that are there, thereby helping to provide more microorganisms to make greater surface contact to the woody material that's there. The wood chips that we've used in the food forest and the ones that we're using over here, and hopefully this fall I'll make a video about the about where the high tunnel is going, and that has been broken down so well, it's just amazing. So the wood chips really do break down. It helps us to keep materials from going up in a burning pile. It helps us to keep it from going into a landfill. It helps to sequester more carbon and build more soil as well as creating the habitats that we talked about, retaining more moisture, decreasing evaporation, decreasing the water needs for your property as well, and creating the wonderful habitat for all of the different visually visible visible organisms, earthworms as well, and the microorganisms that help with feeding the plants that we want to have. It's those soil microorganisms that do all the important feeding for us. So let's go over to the eastern garden plot and look at those permanent raised beds and the paths in between there. Okay, I'm over here in the eastern garden plot right now, and the central garden plot is over to my right, the left of your screen. And again, the video is linked in the upper right hand corner when we actually created these beds. Now last fall I took some of our large composting pile, brought it in and rebuilt up the height of these permanent raised beds, but I did not rebuild up the wood chips that are down in here. Over there where the trellis is and along the margins where the beans are planted as well, we added wood chips each year along those sides. Around the margins around here we add wood chips each year. Now I haven't added any wood chips yet this year, but in the central paths I believe the last time that we added wood chips was 2 years ago. So the wood chips that we're going to be digging up in the path right now are 2 years old or 3 years old, depending on you know, what the constituents are in that area. Let me grab a shovelful and we'll see what that's like. So in this area here, in the shovelful, you can see a few weed seeds starting up in here. There's more of a lighter brown, more of a woody looking consistency to this material. It's still broken down very nice. There was one large stick piece in there, and there will be lots of long, slender, stick-like pieces that are breaking down in here. This is more of the woody material, less of the cambium or the bark or the newer growth. This is more of that higher woody material that you would find in the more mature limbs. But towards the surface, where some of the compost has worked its way down in there, you can't tell any difference. This actually looks just like compost. But you could see this, you could easily use this material to plant many of your perennial plants into as well. Now again, it's not going to look as great because right now you can see it clumps together and stays together, almost looking like clay, and that's because it's been such a wet spring, wet fall, summer, and spring so far. This is one of the few nice days that we got out here, so you can see it's really sticking together. That's one of the benefits when you're in a really wet area, to having your permanent raised beds being above the height of the pathways, so the moisture can work its way down out through there. The wood chips in your paths will take some of that excess nitrogen that's going to leach out of the nutrients that are going to leach out of the permanent raised beds and work down into your paths. You can capture those nutrients in amongst the wood chips as well. So I just wanted to share how we're using wood chips in our permanent raised beds, in our vegetable gardens and kitchen gardens. It's worked out extremely well. In the videos you'll see, especially in the aerial videos, you'll be able to see the nice tan color of that contrast with the darker, rich looking permanent raised beds from the compost, and see the difference. In some of the videos you'll see lots of mushrooms growing up, the fruiting bodies of the mycelium that's beneath, breaking down all of that wood chips. So I just wanted to share, wood chips can be really beneficial in your vegetable gardens. It's worked out extremely well for us. It provides multiple functions. It can be a free resource. If I can find, I know that there's a website that you can sign up for, in the States anyways. If there is a tree service or arborist in your area, and if you sign up and there's some specific questions, whether you take logs or not, or there's certain trees, like many people wouldn't want to have walnuts, worried about the allopathic concerns. We use those here. I don't have any problems with what most people are concerned about, the allopathic chemicals within the woody material that's there. People will talk about needing to hot compost it. We haven't been doing that here, and I'll make a video about that as well, about how allopathic chemical communicators are released at times during stress, and I won't say too much more about that at this point. So hopefully this video was of value to you. If you think it was, please give us a thumbs up. Be sure to leave any comments or questions. If you've got a tree service in your neck of the woods, wherever you are in the country, or a way of contacting people, please leave that information in the in the comments below. I know during times of electrical storms and snowstorms, and when trees are damaged and the power companies are out working, the tree services may be going out and looking for places to dump the loads. And if you have a place, or you have a community, a group of people where you can work with your local town or city to have a place to dump the chips so that everybody could use it, that'd be awesome as well. We want to keep this from going into a landfill. It's a really, really beneficial resource for us as farmers and gardeners. And if I find a link to one of those sites where you can sign up, I'll leave it in the description below. So thanks so much for watching, folks. Please share this at will, and feel free to leave any comments or questions. Thanks, folks. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.